On this episode of AV Week, we honor the passing of FSR co-founder Bill Fitzsimmons and take a look at where the next generation of entrepreneurs and scientists are going to come from. Also looking at the NEC Display Solution and Sharp joint venture. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 481, recorded Friday, November 6th, 2020. Light my candle.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, sound extraordinary.
And by Crestron.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright, your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, a fantastic industry end user now. Her name is Dawn Mead. She works at a place that we can't mention, but she's somewhere in the United States. How are you, ma'am?
Very good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us is Charmaine Torella. I can say where she works for. She works from our buddies over at Verix. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Also with us is Mr. Chris Bach, the only person on the left coast this week, but that's okay. He works for Extron. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be back again.
Absolutely. And Extron's one of our underwriters and one of our supporters. We thank them. Last but not least, he don't work for nobody, so he can say whatever he damn well pleases. His name is Bradford Ben. Good God, watch out. How are you, sir?
Bite my shiny metal ass. Oh, sorry. Was that the wrong phrase? But I've been wanting to say that. I'm doing well.
Glad you found an avenue.
It's been a good day. You know, the highlight of the day is this. The second highlight of the day is I have Starbucks.
I have I have dark matter coffee, and my new favorite brew is called Unicorn Blood. And we'll talk about
you
that
have
later.
it in a loser
I've got hydrogen
cup.
oxide.
Yeah. So
yes, I'm boring.
we mentioned the fact that obviously Bradford been with AVNation for a long time, but he is currently unemployed. By the time this post, you'll have about a day or two to figure out what he's doing next, and he is doing something next. He's not quite old enough to retire yet. So I'm just
get back here. I'll hit you with my cane.
I'm just saying. I said you're not old enough to retire yet. You can hit me around the first. Huh?
Let's move on. So let's talk about the AVNation succession plan, because unfortunately that did come up this week.
It actually did, and the reason for that.
Favorite people.
Are you going to do this, or am I going to do this?
I'll, despite what Craig wants, I won't take over. I was just giving you
I
a
appreciate
segue.
That. So yes, top story actually comes from our website. This week, the AV industry lost a legend. Bill Fitzsimmons of FSR passed away at the age of 89. Fitzsimmons was the F in FSR and was the co-founder and chairman. He, along with Jan Sandry and Charles Rodriguez, started the company in 1981. Actually, Bradford, we'll start with you. What can we learn from the life and times of Mr. Bill Fitzsimmons, spending, more than 40 or 50 years inside the industry and spending the good chunk of the last 40 years at FSR and helping to guide that company?
The first thing is obviously we can determine from this cancer sucks. So that goes without saying. The second thing is the fact he actually did have a succession plan, and he stepped away around 10 years ago. And to me, that's actually one of the things that is impressive is he stepped away, had a succession plan, succeeded to a woman and signed it over to a woman, which when he did was not a hugely popular, wasn't something that automatically occurred. But the fact that it had been planned, it wasn't oh no, something's going wrong. It was I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to go do something else. Yeah. Let me smoothly hand off the reins. It's one of those things where I've seen other companies that have people's names in it, and it hasn't been as smooth, either because of being sold or through unfortunate passings. If we look at Rain, what was it, 3 years ago now, when they got purchased, Rain went away. It wasn't a succession plan, but part of that was because the Rain founders wanted to retire. So I'm very happy that FSR is still around because there was a succession plan. I also think it's something that many of us don't prepare for. For all the lightness of this, of being unemployed, I spent 2 months writing down everything I knew so that when this goes back on, or when someone else comes and takes my job, they can know what to do. So there is succession, but most people don't sit to do that. Yeah. And I think that's a challenge we have. Institutional knowledge is going to be lost. And there's a combination of writing it down, but also of the pass the torch before it's too late, which I'm very impressed that Bill did. Now, also just from a pure, this is what FSR has done. The products themselves have definitely been amazing. You know, I've used them. They are a sponsor of ours. I'm very happy they are, but I've used them for little problem solvers for years. It sounds funny, the surface mount one gang plate that's slanted at an angle to be a control system, to be a control interface. There's no one else who makes something like that for under $150. And I'm like, they understand the market. They got it right. And a lot of that's Jan. A lot of that's a few of our other friends. But the fact that Bill had planned and done the transition ahead of time, I think is very telling. And he got out while he was still able to have fun. You know, yeah. As you and I joke of I'm not quite ready to retire yet. I hope Tim and I aren't still doing this in 20 years, because by that point, I'm hoping, other people take over and I'm retired.
I had to do the math there. Yeah, 20 years sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Charmaine, I don't want to make too much of the geography of this. However, you work for Varex, New York, New Jersey area. New Jersey seems to be a hotbed of entrepreneurs and crazy scientists. And when I can personally go back 100 plus years, when you got Edison and in there, and also obviously Tesla in and around there, you've got a number of other ones, especially in the AV industry, who happen to be in that area. Obviously, Bill and Jan and Rodriguez was part of that. Where is our next generation of crazy scientists? Where is our next generation of AV entrepreneurs? Where, looking at, whether it's technology or it is a business person or whatever, is it geography? Is that New York, that tri-state area, the New York, New Jersey area, really that fertile for that area? Or is it really just kind of that's where the population was at the time, but we expanded the last 100 years or so, and there's other areas.
Yeah, you just said it. That's where the population was at the time. The hotbed of Jersey. Where the mad scientists. And going back to FSR, amazing company, amazing team, because they truly are not mad scientists, but the right scientists when it comes to their solutions. And many times as an integrator, FSR is who I fell back on, as well as my clients, to be a problem solver. Like Brad said, okay, we need it exactly this way. They understand the concept of it's bespoke, the system, and you can't just make everything and it's going to fit all. That's not their focus. They are custom tailors in terms of what they produce, which makes them interesting. The good news is they are still breeding that within their environment, that type of plan, which is amazing. So there's new people, different people in FSR today that are coming out with some new interesting things to make solutions that are now evolving from AV to IT work better and a little more seamlessly for customers and integrators and solve some problems. But I see the talent of that spread out now. It could be in California. I see California coming up with a lot of scientists within that region. One of them on this call right now as we speak, Chris. We also see other places outside the United States, right, in Europe that are coming up with different things. So it's become really global. Everyone in the world has taken the examples from companies like FSRs and said, hey, we could do this, but we also have this. Let's put it together and see what we have. So it's now becoming like you can have someone in China coming out with a new control system called JIDO or in another area and just, change the game. So the game is really quickly evolving globally. Come from anywhere right now.
All right, Mr. Bach. Charmaine did mention the fact I was going to get to the West Coast crazy scientist, and that would be your owner, Andrew Edwards. Although, just for the record, Andrew comes from the East Coast.
Yep,
but he has been
he's an import.
Well, he's been in California long enough. He's a Californian. I mean, he's got a ranch
83.
there. Yeah, that's a minute, right?
Yep.
So, talk about it from a perspective of somebody who works for, one of these entrepreneurs, one of these cowboys, but also, kind of where you see the next generation coming from.
Well, that was a beautiful setup, Tim. Those are actually the thoughts that I'd come up with a couple of days ago when I was looking at the article. I, first of all, would just also say, I think on behalf of all of us here, that our thoughts go out to Bill's family and anybody that's still working or worked at FSR. I never had the pleasure of meeting Bill. He sounds like an awesome stand-up guy, class act. And he reminds me, the thoughts that I'd come up with as I was thinking about it, of my experience at Extron, right? You got the right folks at the right place at the right time with the right product, kind of like Charmaine was saying, and you set up something large, but you can still stay, in some cases, ours included, private, and keep that family feel. This is my 20th year with the company. This is my first full-time job. I was 21 when I started. I was the young buck for a while. And next year or whenever, I'll be able to say they've had me half my life. My wife, I met her at Extron 19 years ago. She's still there. There's been an awful lot of marriages at Extron, ironically. Just the right people somehow get through the filter of HR and wind up staying there a really long time. So I think what's interesting today, too, is there's so many acquisitions and conglomerates and mergers that companies like Extron and FSR can stay true for decades and just steer the ship forward and have what people want and listen to what people ask for and give them what they want and take all that into account. So I'm pretty fortunate. Our little industry is still small, has a family feel. Don't burn your bridges. The people that you talk to someday, you'll talk to some other way down the road, maybe with a different business card. But I think that's one of the best things that we have going for us, is this little cool world that we're in is still the way it is. Relationships and all.
Donna, we'll end with you on this one, both from an overarching standpoint of working with FSR, the number of years that you've been in the industry, but also how do we encourage this, right? Chris made a very good point about some of the acquisitions and the conglomerates that have kind of come together, and we're going to talk about one of them most likely by the end of this show. But how do we encourage that entrepreneurial spirit within our industry, right? Certainly there are incubators that encourage it in the app world and the IT world. How do we as a community get around folks that have the chutzpah and have the wherewithal to kind of stick their neck out and try something new?
Well, I will say one thing. It absolutely comes down to all of us working together. We have to let people know that we're a thing, the whole evangelize the industry so people know to play in our space. But I think the best way to encourage potential entrepreneurs in our space is to encourage the ones that are starting. The innovation pavilion, or whatever the heck they call it at Infocom every year when we're there in person, is one of the coolest places on the floor. And I don't know how many people actually go there. But it's, tiny little booths, don't cost them anywhere near what Chris and the folks at Extron or some of the big companies, the Sonys and the whoever's are paying for the mega booths. But it lets them show their new, unique product, their incredible solution. Some of the guys that started out in the little innovation pavilion are now among the big guys. Yeah. Some of them never get any further. So, encouraging the ones that are trying, I think, is a big step. Encouraging younger people getting into the industry, like the NSCA Inspire program, or Ignite program. Those sorts of things are wonderful. But I'm going to go back to something Bradford said. And, I don't want to encourage him thinking he's the wise sage of the industry.
He is the oldest one on this call. I just want to point that out.
But he did point out something that I've encountered at my own company, Redacted, just this week. And that's, we can't hoard knowledge. And, so many people in our industry and in the IT industry adjacent to us and overlapping with us we're too big of fans of J.R.R. Tolkien, I guess, because we're all sitting on our little hoard of knowledge like smog, and nobody's going to get, our precious. And you can't work like that. When I came into the company I'm at now, I'm in charge of AV for an entire sector worldwide with my boss. My boss is in charge, but I'm like in charge of designing the AV for the entire sector worldwide. But until this point, there hasn't been anyone in charge. So each little IT group and each little facilities group came up with their own solutions, and they don't want to let go of their kingdom. They don't want to stay in their lane because they do have real job responsibilities aside from the ones they've taken over the years. But they don't want to say, oh, we have an expert now, we have a team now that's going to come in and standardize across the sector. They just say, no, this is my kingdom and this is my knowledge, and I'm not going to tell you how it worked. And that sort of idea, it's a problem at end users, but I know it's a problem out there in the manufacturer world, in the integrator world. You can't guard your job by guarding your knowledge.
It's not a zero-sum game, all bad for the same team.
Yeah. What's that expression? A candle doesn't diminish its own light by lighting other candles.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the knowledge in our industry. We have to share that. We have to train the young guys coming up. We have to share with colleagues and coworkers. Except for proprietary stuff, Chris, you manufacturers share with your other manufacturers and innovators. That shared pool of knowledge, the general knowledge, is what sparks those ideas that say, that's great info, but what if we did this?
Rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were the fly on the wall in the earlier call I had today. That's exactly right. And especially when we go back to Mr. Fitzsimmons, right? He shared the knowledge.
Yeah.
Why? And I said earlier today, development internally, which leads to helping you be more competitive, which leads to longevity and succession.
Right.
It's the track, right? And that's what has to start happening more, because the talent, for us to get talent in AV is harder and harder. We have a lot of people competing for our talent all the time, and not just other competition. We have manufacturers, vendors, other partners in other sectors. They're coming for our, coming for our talent. And then it's going to, the Fitzsimmons of the world, they pass away. And if they don't, develop this talent and bring them in now and pass that in, then it's going to be a deficit for our industry.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things is as we look into the next year, the next 18 months, passing along that education, that knowledge is going to be imperative, regardless of which sector of the industry you're in, whether it's residential, commercial, or digital signage. You have to pass that along.
And one last thing, Tim.
Yep.
Mr. Fitzsimmons is, rest in peace. He is an example of how to do this, not just with setting the succession plan with Jan Sandry and the rest of the company, but after he stepped down as head of FSR. He didn't just go off in a fishing boat or go
chairman,
learn to crochet. He stayed on as chairman. He came to every InfoComm and every big show that he could come to, and he kept developing his knowledge and sharing his knowledge. And who knows, maybe him meeting some of those Innovation Pavilion people sparked a new idea for him, and he talked to his folks. That's the kind of thing you need. Step aside, make plans, but don't give up, and just keep working at it.
Absolutely. All right. Our second story here, and it'll be our last one from commercial integrator Good Lord, Sharp and NEC. I combined like 3 different companies' names.
I do that too.
Sharp and NEC have finalized their joint venture. The new firm is called Sharp NEC Display Solutions. Sharp bought 66% of NEC Display Solutions. I will let smarter people than me discuss whether that's an acquisition, a joint venture. Don't really care. This is what they're calling it, as a joint venture. According to the announcement, the company will, quote unquote, continue its focus on the B2B display business, producing a wide range of displays for markets and applications. Charmaine, we'll start with you on this. What does this deal? Again, the joint venture, I really want to call it an acquisition because it really feels like one. What does this deal say about the display market here, not just in the U.S., but also globally?
Well, what it basically says, those 2 particular houses in particular, is they are trying to further develop their product set. Okay, so when you take a look at them individually, right? Sharp NEC. NEC, we on the commercial side use that all the time. It's strong, it's good, it lasts, it's a little bit of a higher price point, but that's okay. It's worth it. The value is there. But where they fell behind is a lot of the room solutions are now changing, and those display products are not really fitting into that anymore. So now they're developing their portfolio to get more into the video, into digital signage, to do more digital signage, display applications, things of that nature. And then you take Sharp, right, who's kind of there already somewhat, but Sharp comes with the interactive displays, more of that, which kind of NEC didn't have. So I don't know if it's an acquisition, more like a marriage of sorts. I think it's a marriage that's going to require a little bit of counseling, not much, but I think they will develop a nice little synergy once they go through their first year and honeymoon phase, and they have Dr. Phil counseling them a little bit, whoever that is, and they are going to develop into a truly interesting relationship over time. That's because of they're trying to fit the now evolution of where the spaces are going together, and both sides, each one has a little bit of what the other one needs, if that makes sense. And so I think it's a good marriage. That's how I see it.
God love you for bringing that whole marriage thing all the way through that. So even with the offspring in there a little bit. So, Mr. Bach, who was the big winner here? And it doesn't have to be NEC or Sharp. It could be us in the industry. Who's the biggest winner out of this joint venture?
Us in the industry, because they're both going to still be around. They're both great brands. We've got a lot of history with the brand. We've got great relationship with the brand. I enjoy both brands. And before Hisense came along and snatched out the consumer division of Sharp, that was all I would recommend for family and friends. Everywhere that I had a say in what TV should I buy, because, Chris works at Extron and he knows AV, he must be the guy to talk to about it, I would inevitably say Sharp. Yep. And every Sharp I have ever installed still works, even if it's 12 years old. Wow. It just keeps working. And we're talking, sometimes they're on a lot, but they still keep going. So I'm glad they're still around. We've been working with those companies since the System 8, for those of you who've been in the game a long time. And remember those tanks that we used to make system switchers? Yeah. So that puts in perspective from 15 years ago. I think it's interesting how much over the last decade in particular, back to the mega consolidation comment I made earlier, is happening particularly in the display industry with the race to the bottom, no margin anymore. Panasonic was making, and still is, making HDMI input chips for most folks. They were making glass for everybody when plasmas were still a thing. LG today pretty much is the only OLED manufacturer that I'm aware of for displays of large size, 60-inch and up kind of thing. So Sony even doesn't make it. They get the OLED from LG and then they put their scaling engine around it. So I think it's good in the end. I think it's more Sharp. I was surprised how big Sharp was, that they could take 2/3 of NEC. I thought NEC was an enormous company because many years ago you saw NEC's.
Real quickly, it was the NEC Display Solutions portion of NEC.
It was a subsidiary.
It was a subsidiary. Yeah, it wasn't. So I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it. I should have said it better.
Yeah, and it was to convert the deal to American dollars. It was only, I do the air quotes of that, $29 million. Even though it was 3 billion yen, it's 29 million with an M dollars. So it kind of changes the scale a little bit.
It sure does.
What you would think. And, as I was pointing out to Tim, and we were talking about, it's a subsidiary that's still wholly owned by NEC.
Okay. Sort of. Well, I know from personal experience that over the last 5 years, everywhere I've been going, because I'm a field guy, it feels like Samsung and LG have eaten everyone's lunch.
Yeah.
They pretty well run the gamut now.
Especially in the commercial side, right? And that is now you go to Sharp. Sharp's one of the first displays I saw that had 8K, actual legitimate, honest to God 8K, and it looks gorgeous. And they obviously had content created for it because there's no content yet. But
I shoot it on my phone.
Well, yeah.
There's content. It just can't be streamed.
Yes.
see-
We'll put a 10 gigabit link between it. It'll be all right.
Oh, dear Lord.
In addition to displays, remember NEC projectors, Sharp has
Mhm.
equipment.
Well,
There's
and
other
the-
things that
the
they
other thing is-
bring together into that marriage.
Yeah, and NEC also has their ALP system, which is their digital signage. Quite frankly, a smart AI digital signage solution. So now, whether or not from a corporate standpoint, I don't know if they're a part of the display solution arm or if it's part of a different component. So I'm not quite sure on that one. Dawn, same kind of question as to Chris. You know, who's the biggest winner here in this deal?
I mean, honestly, to some extent, what Chris said, yes, we are, as an industry, the biggest winner. But also, as Chris said, and as you and I have talked on this show for years and outside this show, it's a dirty little secret of the AV industry. Chris touched on it that, really, there's only a few companies out there making the things. Yep. We used to have this with projectors. There was only like 2 or 3 projector companies. Everyone else bought their technology, OEM'd it, put their own case around it, maybe added a lens or a different chip or touches and features, but the core of it were all from the same people. Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing in displays. They all had the same glass, or they all had the same chipset, or they all had the same parts of guts that make them what they are. So in that regard, it doesn't really affect anyone except maybe the people whose checks are now being signed by someone else's payroll. But personally, it affects my industry, or at least my little corner of it, because NEC and Sharp are among a few companies that were approved and allowed to use. So you guys had mentioned a lot of people that are taking over the consumer and the commercial worlds. Well, that may be, but that doesn't mean we're allowed to use them. Yeah. And so there's limited numbers of companies that we're allowed to use based on where they're manufactured, based on how they're manufactured, and even sometimes based on what they put in there, what those extra features are. And Lord knows, AV people, we love our gadgets, we love our gizmos, and we love our features. So we start stuffing everything we can into our boxes and then eliminate entire verticals that can't use boxes that have all of the Wi-Fi and the near field and the, all the bells and whistles. So, for me, it's exciting because it'll increase the product line that I'm allowed to buy from potentially. And that's good news. But I don't see it as quite as earth shattering as you might think if you were thinking it was like the full companies.
Yeah. Well, and just to so this is also clear. Sharp is owned by Fox, the same company that owns Foxconn. Right. So it is not a small corporation by any stretch of the imagination. A number of years ago, Foxconn made the bid, outbid a number of Japanese companies, much to the chagrin of the Japanese government, who was trying to shore it up and trying to offer a bunch of incentives, and it just didn't happen. So, Bradford, you've been on the side of this on different sides from the manufacturer side. How do you manage customer and dealer expectations in a deal like this? When it comes to whether it's the dealers themselves, the actual integrators, or even their customers, right? So let's say that one of your clients or one of your clients' clients was standardizing on one or the other, and you have to have that conversation. How do you assuage fears?
So first thing is you say things aren't going to change for a year, because that's how long it's going to take to figure things out when you bring two companies together this far. And then after that, you answer as best you can. Now, there's always spin. There's always this didn't go as expected, but this is what we're planning. But you look at the way Legrand did it pretty successfully. They did it slowly and over time as they brought these all together and waited till they had mass to make the change. But the other thing is Legrand took the biggest question head on. Who do I call? That is all any of us care about. If it's a Sharp TV, I call Sharp. Who do I call? If it's an NEC TV, I call NEC. Now there's this new thing. Who do I call? You call whatever brand's on the front of it. And it's not that uncommon for things like this to happen. Part of it is because, as you mentioned, LG and Samsung are taking everyone's lunch money, and taking their romantic interest as well at the same time in the B2B. And it's not just displays. Think about hotels and hospitality. Think about all those other things. When most people think B2B, oh, it's digital signage. No. You look at some of these properties, the money is in the hotel room displays, not in the digital signage. But Sharp and NEC did something smart. Why should we fight with each other when we can fight with the two behemoths? Yeah. For those of us who are old enough, remember when Toyota and GM combined on a plant and built I think it was the Nova and the Camry that were identical? Yep. Same kind of idea. And who did you call? Whoever you bought it from, whatever brand you had on it. And as I said, it's $29 million. Not that $29 million is a small amount of money, but when you put it in the context of Panasonic lost $9 billion in a year, and that Samsung has written off $9 billion for Galaxy 7 Note, I hate to say it's a rounding error for some of these companies.
But it's a rounding error for some of these companies.
It's less than a percentage point. Now, I don't know Sharp and NEC's value, but it's what it is. I think it is a good move of let's work together. Cooperation, I think, is what we called it a little while ago.
Cooperation,
but also, it could easily backfire if they don't do it appropriately. Like when Chevy and Toyota built together, there were still Chevy dealers and Toyota dealers.
Yeah.
When QSC built amplifiers for JBL Cinema back in the 90s, whose ever name was on the front was who you called. And as long as that stays, I think it can be successful. It happens, a whole bunch of places. Look at what Black & Decker and GE did for a couple of years. They were the same company, different brands. The partnership itself, I think, is not that different from video games. And, that sounds a little funny, but it's kind of like Sony and PlayStation and with its PlayStation and Xbox with its Xboxes, or Microsoft with its Xboxes. They have to have enough stuff overlapping that the third party manufacturers can build software that will sell, like Call of Duty, like Spider-Man, like Star Wars, like all these other things. So yes, they compete 100% with each other. It's not that they follow standards, because as we talked about last week, there are so many of them to pick from, but that they make sure that everyone can be successful and stuff will work together. But that's pretty much what they're doing. Is they're doing here's these big companies, LG and Samsung, that are taking our lunch money. Let's work together instead of fighting each other. Keep our channels the same, blend products. Now, the things that will get interesting to me is kind of what Legrand went through. Is it a chief display? Is it a middle Atlantic? Is it a chief mount? Is it middle Atlantic mount? Who's making the mounts? And do models become obsolete because they're so overlapping? And that same thing happened with Crown and C Audio. That to me is if they do that too fast, is going to be the failure.
I think that you're going to see that, but like you said at the beginning, this is going to take at least a year to figure all that out. So
yeah.
All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Dawn Mead, thank you. How do people get a hold of you? And not your company, but just you in general, and connect with you and your wonderful self.
I was going to say, as everybody that watches or listens knows, I can't tell you where I work. I'd have to kill you. But I can be found always on...
Not this week, Dawn. Not this week.
True. Very true. I can be found on the social media networks as either Dawn Mead or AV Dawn. I'm on the Twitters as @AVDawn. And of course, you can always find me here at AVNation.tv, hosting the AV Social Show whenever we get around to recording it, and appearing quite regularly on Tim's AV Week.
Don't say that. You and Mitchell are doing a bang up job. So
I know we have a schedule now. I promise.
That's important. Schedules are important. Charmaine Torella, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. And just so you know, Google told on you, so I now know where you work. But
I mean, here's a hint. LinkedIn will tell
Don't
you
Google
too.
her. Don't
but,
no.
you know.
Don't Google her. Don't go to LinkedIn. Just follow her on the Twitters. Don't do any of that.
Don't say that. I got in a lot of trouble, Don, when Tim said it.
Oh, legally, I'm not allowed to tell you where I work. Shh.
No, I won't say it, but I just, certain things are telling on you. But you can find me on LinkedIn just by typing in my name, Charmaine Torella, and ctorella@verix.com, where I work, or just type my name in Twitter, and you'll find me, and you'll find my Gmail email address if you want to reach me personally.
There we go. At least it's on a Hotmail. I think I still have a Hotmail somewhere. So
They won't let you turn it off. I tried to kill mine.
I know. All right, Mr. Bach, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, too. You can get me on Twitter at Out of the Bach, even though I don't do anything with Twitter.
You totally should, because that's an awesome handle.
I was glad it was available. And then you can also get me on LinkedIn, and you can get me at cbach, B-A-C-H, at extron.com.
All right, very good. And Mr. Ben, last but not least, how do we connect with you, sir?
Well, you can get me on my CompuServe account at 7142.
The Juno address.
The Juno. Oh my God, the Juno. Holy crap. What's your ICQ number? What's your your ICQ number?
It's next to my MySpace.
Yes.
7. When I started, there were only 255 items allowed on the network. There was no subnets. So you can actually find me at avnation.tv. I'm the digital janitor there currently. So it's Bradford at avnation.tv, or just send it to the webmaster, and you can send it to both me and Tim at the same time. I have my own website at bradfordben.com. As you might be able to see, for those of you who are watching the video, my office is undergoing a little bit of construction as I prepare for going to my next phase of what my next thing's going to be. Not when I grow up, just the next thing I can get paid to do. And you can, of course, find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on the Twitters at Bradford Ben. When the Bears are playing, expect me to be lampooning Tim, although this year it's kind of hard to, because they're doing better than I hoped they would. But my dislike of the Saints is greater than my enjoyment from ridiculing the Bears. So last week I actually did root for the Bears.
Is that why they lost?
Yeah, sorry.
7-0.
Yeah. So.
Oh, yes, they are 7. Dawn's Steelers are 7-0. I think you guys are the last ones, aren't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Packers lost to Vikings.
Yeah.
They're doing pretty well for a minute.
And then last
the Packers and the Bears are now Yeah. All right. Bradford mentioned it. Don't follow me on the Twitters, because you'll either get me cheering or bemoaning the Bears, or seeing really cold pictures of me, exercising outside, which is
running in the morning.
God, love it. So if you want to find something cool and you're into exercise, or you just want to challenge yourself, check out Andy Frisella. This is on an ad. I got nothing from this kid, except I have a lot of respect for him. He's the CEO of a company actually here in St. Louis called First Form and Supplement Superstore, and he has a challenge and a podcast. If you are not overly sensitive to using curse words, called Real AF is his podcast, and he has a challenge called 75 Hard. And Mr. Chris Netto turned me on to it. And so I said, that sounds good. Real quickly, this is what it is. It is you work out twice a day for 45 minutes each. Once has to be outside. You drink a gallon of water. And if you're watching the video, this is my half gallon of water. I do it twice. You read 10 pages of an actual physical book every single day. You pick a diet and you stick to it. And no, it's not a seafood diet, because that's been my diet for many years. But you pick a diet, right? And there's no cheat meals, there's no cheat days, there's no cheat anything for 75 days, and there's no alcohol for 75 days. And those of you who've been around me on any sort of trade show understand that I enjoy a good gin and tonic, and I have not had one in 33 days. So 75 days, I am on day 33 or 34 now. And yeah, it's interesting. It challenges you and it strengthens you both mentally and physically. So that's what we're doing. And you'll find that on Twitter. So don't follow me. But go by the website. You'll find folks like Chris Bach and the folks at Extron who help us bring you AV Week. And we are very, very thankful for their support. including a brand spanking new thing that we landed this week called the AV Tech Bible, and Extron is in there in spades. Both they have an ad as well as a number of their products. Almost 500 pages. Good God, almost 500 pages. Tons of great articles. Bradford wrote one of them. We have over 30 categories that have listings, so check that out. It's on the website. There'll be an ad at the top, or it'll be under the resources section. Also, we're doing an event with Future, our friends over at AV Network, SCN. Megan Detta and I are producing an event called AV Network Nation, or AVN Squared. December 10th, you can hang out with us all day, and Bradford will be on that panel as well. Why am I putting you on a panel? Good God.
Right now, it's just you and me. There's no one else listed.
No, there is. They haven't gotten to her yet, but there is another person. Bradford and I, and a very smart young lady, is going to talk. We're going to talk about AV network, audio network security. I've got a couple of folks talking about AV over IP. Megan's doing one on digital signage and getting back to work in the age of COVID, based on an AIA presentation. We've got Manny Almagro and his buddy Ben from Q Motion leading off and doing the kickoff keynote. So really great stuff. Spend all day with us. You get 4.75 RUs, both from CTS, CTSI, or CTSD. So again, check that out at avnetworknation.com is the website for that. For us, though, for AVNation, go to by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others, including our buddy Matt Scott, the world's worst Canadian, but he's the best one we've got. He can.
We've got Brock. Brock's better.
Well, Brock is better. Yes, Brock is better. So.
I just want to know which is going to be our emotional support Canadians during this difficult time in America.
Alanis is my support.
Mrs. Brock is my support.
Okay. So on that note, on avnation.tv, that's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. That's Bradford at avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week. Tell me what that's from, Mitchell.
It's a smaller version of Light My Fire.
Oh my God.